Families are one of the most sacred relationships that we have. Often starts to happen is the relationship between, spouses, a husband and a wife, partners, whatever you want to call that. That starts to really be impacted when we introduce more and more family members. Is there anything wrong with adding more? Not at all. Thank you for tuning in and watching this. My name is Umbreen Hamid, and my intention here is to serve you by making sure that you can actually strengthen that bond of marriage a little bit more with your companion to really pour in that goodness into your family. And today we're going to talk about a very common topic that I really hear a lot of couples say. And that's just this idea of you want your partner to respect you, right? If you're with me, drop in the comments. Say, yes, I do. Isn't that what you said when you began this whole journey together? I do. I do want to take you in health, in wealth, in sickness, in all these areas. However, what we often fail to realize is no one is trying to disrespect you. Heck, sometimes we forget to respect our own selves. And that's where a lot of challenges arise, I would say. So in my own relationship, I waited and waited and waited and waited for about 15 years to see respect somehow morph itself in to our relationship. However, it never came. And I won't say it never came because of dot, 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 and dot. What I do know to be true is our own self-perception plays a huge role in the way that we think about respect, the way we give respect, and the way that we show up for our partners. You know, if you can, you know, take out a piece of paper and pen and answer some of these questions that I'm going to be asking you. Who taught you how to respect? Really? Who was it that instilled how respect looks and what it really means to respect someone in your own life? Most of the time, people will say, yep, it was my upbringing. My mom, my dad, my uncle, my aunt, my grandparents, the community that we were around. Or if you were raised in the foster system, that system taught you what respect looks like. And as human beings, we have our own interpretations and our own experience that really create what respect becomes for us. Here's the missing piece of the puzzle, though. Often, respect has nothing to do with external people when we become an adult. And it has a lot to do with our own internal self-image. Think about a time in your life, and if you are so courageous, while you're writing it down, share it with us. Think about a time in your life when you felt so disrespected by your partner. The person who is supposed to be your champion, your cheer squad, who's supposed to understand you, who's supposed to support you, all these things. What was that one time in your own married life that you felt a ton of disrespect coming? And then hold on to that thought. Our respect and the definition actually evolves and changes depending on our circumstances. If you are at a workplace, the way you define respect is very, very, very different than you would define it in your home. If you are thinking about respecting your boss, your superiors, you show up very differently, almost like prim and proper and very professional, right? Because that's how respect is felt in the professional environment. Versus if you're hanging out with friends, right? And you're all pulling each other's legs and laughing hysterically, talking about moments when someone did something pretty stupid and dumb because they were wasted, or they were going through their own internal battles, or they did this thing in college, right? Like you can relate to all of this, right? These are experiences that many of us have. If not college, then think about time in school. So respect is something that we define differently depending on the circumstances, depending on what it is and where we are in our lives. And almost like it evolves. The way you treat your parents, right? That respect is very different. The way that I've been raised, you don't talk back to your parents, you don't question your parents. You just do what they say. That translated to respect. Now, the older that I got, the more I began to think and question what it is that I'm actually respecting. If I'm constantly changing my own demeanor to respect differently, what values, what qualities do I want to bring into my marriage, which allow me to feel respected? And I can do the same for my partner. And there is such a beautiful thing that starts to happen when you go on this journey by yourself, right? Oftentimes, we really think that like respect or reflecting or changing the way things have been has to be like almost like a manual. However, there's such a simple approach that we can take. Just start to become aware, observe, watch, see. What are the things that really trigger your partner, make them feel like this is a friction point, versus what actually makes them feel like they're cared for, they're appreciated, they're valued? That will be the differentiator when it comes to how you define respect. Now, when you start to really see things and bring awareness to what makes your husband and your wife, or your partner feel respected, start to do a little bit more of that. Not for their sake, for your sake. Why? When you show someone respect and care and that they are being noticed, that you see them, that you hear them, that you feel them, you will also start to elevate the respect that you have for your own self. Okay, let's kind of think about a scenario that really brings this simple point home. You see that when you speak highly of your partner in front of your own parents, it almost starts to make it feel like to your partner that you have a higher level of integrity to the relationship. You're more committed to them, that you embrace them, that you don't really sit there and talk openly about their flaws, that you protect them, that you keep them safe. These are all human desires. We want to feel like we're accepted, especially by that one person who matters so much to us, right? Our companion. And when your companion starts to shower you with goodness, starts to be that protector where their family knows, hey, you don't speak ill of your husband or your wife. Why? Because I'm there to guard them. They'll feel a higher level of respect coming from you. And somehow, magically, it happens. You'll start to actually think higher of yourself. When you start to think higher of yourself, so will your spouse. Why? Because in a way, we emit energy. We emit and show other people how we want to be treated. I'm not telling you that keep respecting someone who disrespects you. What I'm saying is find the small things that they appreciate, that you can do to really make that difference, and then start to do them really well. As you start to go on this simple little journey, right, where you're trying to look at things in a positive light versus what you've been looking at things in, right? You don't feel respected by your partner because you're focused on the things that are not working, like many of us are, right? So I'm not going to be the one to tell you that don't focus on those things. Those are bad for you. What I'm going to say is become aware. Become aware. When you focus on complaining about what your wife isn't doing right, when you focus on nagging your husband for not picking up after himself, when you focus on saying mean things to your sister-in-law, what is happening in that relationship? Yeah, I know. You guys are getting pulled apart even further. There's even a greater level of disconnect. Why? Because as a husband, you kind of know that when your wife starts talking about your family, no good is coming out of it. Or as a wife, when you know your husband starts talking about your friends, you kind of already predict all the negative stuff that's coming down the pipeline. If you cannot relate to me, that's great. Why? Because there's some of you who've actually built a very different bond where you recognize and realize that respect is a two-way street. Sometimes your partner, your husband or your wife, they'll say something really mean, something out of line, something where you know that they cross boundaries. How you handle that situation will speak volumes about the respect that you hold for yourself. If you start to react, meet them exactly where they are. They say, you know what? It seems like you've gained a lot of weight. Like you're just not eating well. You don't go to the gym anymore. And I'm not attracted to you either. And you come back with, oh, yeah, you're no buffed guy anyways. You're no buffed girl anyways. You haven't really don't go to the gym either. And you're just lucky that you have a high metabolism. You eat all this crap food and you don't gain weight. The both of you have gone from normal to lower levels of energy. You're not lifting each other up, you're bringing each other down. So, when in a relationship, the both of you are focused on bringing each other down, you're bringing that whole marriage down, you're bringing that whole family down, you're bringing down that home of yours. One of the most sacred places in the world, that home. And when there's respect missing amongst a father and a mother, a husband and a wife, it trickles down to every other relationship in that home. Think about it. What is one thing that triggers you where you react to your partner? Write it down. When you write down that one thing that triggers you, you're going to start to become more aware of how often that comes up. So the next time that your wife says to you, yeah, you've gained a lot of weight, what's going on? Pause. Don't react. Actually, take a moment to respond. And there are so many ways of responding, right? That toolkit could keep growing, in all honesty. Respond after pausing. Okay, I hear you. Okay, I guess it's time for me to hit the gym. Or sometimes that response is just silence. Silence where your emotions are contained, where your fumes are not going all over the house and you're not sharing its energy sprays of friction. Why? Because you respect yourself too much to take it personally. As a husband and wife, there's so many conversations that you can have. However, when you have more intentionality about the conversation and what you want to gain out of it, you'll start to have more open conversations filled with respect versus the tear me down, I'm going to bring you down, I'm going to up one you. That kind of stuff doesn't work for anyone. And then you start to wonder, why am I bitter and miserable? Think about it. You're focusing on the things that are really not going right. If every single day you began to focus on one thing that your spouse did for you, that you appreciated, that you respected, that you adored, that you connected with, that made you feel seen and heard, what would that goodness look like over a week, over 30 days, over a year? You have intentionally recognized in 1 year 356 good things that your partner has done for you. And these don't have to be big things, tiny, small things like, hey, you know what? I really felt her presence. Or, hey, you know what? I really felt him stepping up with the kids. I saw that even though she was frustrated, she stayed calm. I recognized that even though I threw the clothes on the floor, he just politely picked them up and put them in the laundry. One act of awareness where you're fully engaged and immersed in looking for the good will allow you to respect your partner just a little bit more. And that's all we're looking for. We're not looking for some magic pill, some potion that you take and everything changes, right? Going from I feel disrespected to, oh my God, there's so much respect in between us all of a sudden. It doesn't. What you have to recognize and realize is marriage is one of the most difficult relationships in the world. You come up with your own upbringing, your own definitions, and your own experiences that create the narrative of how you define respect and what you value. Then you find a companion or you find a partner who wants to spend time with you, who wants to spend their life with you. However, you both look at life in such different narratives. Wouldn't you agree that the lens of goodness is something that we all have as human beings? And maybe we can strengthen that muscle a little bit more. And so there's a difference, right? Like you want to also know what makes you feel respected. So the first thing I told you to focus on a little bit is become aware. Start to notice what actually makes your partner feel respected. Now we're going to bring the lens back in. What are the things that make you feel respected? Write them down. Come up with 5 things at least that tell you that you're being respected versus disrespected. The tone of my partner's voice, the thought of intentionality, the pause before reacting. All these are small ways that you feel respected. You feel seen, you feel heard, and ultimately you feel appreciated to really strengthen that bond between the both of you. Now, when you have this list, I want to actually challenge you to share this list with your partner. And the both of you should do it. The both of you sit down, take a little bit of time, and come to each other from a place of understanding. Share your list. Ask questions that come out of curiosity, not judgments, not the past. Because you're here right now watching this until this late, this far in, because you can relate to this. Something in the past is no longer working, so you got to change it. You got to break that cycle, and that takes intentionality. So go ahead, make that list for yourself. Share it with your partner. Tell them, hey, you know what? When you talk to me in a loud voice in front of the kids, I really feel disrespected. Be open to listening to, when I come home and then you ask me what's for dinner, I feel disrespected. Share that. Start talking. And remember, make your intention to be one that makes you understand one another. Now, before we hop off, this one is really important. Are you going to make mistakes? Yes. Are they going to make mistakes? Yes. You have to welcome those mistakes. You have to embrace them. You have to move forward from them from a place of compassion. Why? Because all these years that you've been with them have kind of been piling up to get to where we are now. Now, what we're doing is slowly removing the things that no longer serve this relationship to really uphold and uplift, to create one that really brings forth joy, respect, connection, compassion, camaraderie, cheer, celebration, just a sense of goodness, where you know that this person that you married, this was the best decision that you made. So don't forget that our marriages require a ton of effort. And oftentimes we are so busy attending to everything else that we forget the sacredness of this beautiful union. So I'm sending you a ton of umbergy and a whole lot of goodness. Thank you so very much for watching until the end. And please drop in the comments anything that you took away. Any way that you can share your wisdom, share your goodness and your realizations with other people, it'll trickle a butterfly effect